Hi everyone, so today we are talking all about the INTJ and how the INTJ dresses. And I want to discuss basically how the INTJ dresses, how I've come to sort of realize all of this, and also how it relates to the cognitive function stack of the INTJ. And I also wanted to discuss finally some style tips for the INTJ in case they are interested. And as an image consultant, that's what I do. I take clients and you know, that's how I make my living. So the second half of this video, or maybe the last third of this video, will be more about like how the INTJ can style themselves so that they come across accurately. Okay, so let's get into it and first of all discuss the INTJ. What is the INTJ? The INTJ is someone who starts out with introverted intuition. Introverted intuition is this sort of amorphous, abstract intuition. And so the way that you can describe this is it will remember things like the gist of things. It's not going to remember the details, and it thinks of how things connect to a larger whole, and it's very subjective, it's introverted. It's the kind of function that is just kind of floaty. It's just, so that's the majority of the INTJ. And the thing is that most people don't actually see that because it's introverted. The first thing that they say about the INTJ is that they are a very matter-of-fact person. So that's the extroverted thinking. The extroverted thinking is a function that is basically fact-based. It's about the facts of the world, and it's about objective facts. It's not so much about putting things together, which is more like introverted thinking, like putting all of these details together into a sort of grid and things that really make sense. It is more about, these are the facts, this is what they are, and this is like a step-by-step logic type of thing. It's a pretty linear logic, and INTJ will often even think out loud because they are kind of extroverting their thinking, right? I mean, it's not literal. Extroverted thinking is not literally extroverting all of their thinking, okay? But that can sometimes be how it is, as they will really be very matter-of-fact. They speak in a matter-of-fact way. And then next up, we have introverted feeling. Now, introverted feeling is all about identity. It's about personal identity. It's about personal morals, personal preferences, personal aesthetics, all of this. It's basically like a self-referential, subjective like feeling. And it's not about feeling as in being upset or being scared or happy. It's about feeling like these kinds of things that are not facts. Thinking is more about fact-based, and feeling is more about everything else that's not a fact. So all these subjective things. And so that's next in their function stack. So now what do we have so far? We have someone who they come across as very logical, and they come across as very matter-of-fact. But then on the inside, they actually have this abstract, amorphous thing called introverted intuition, and they have this self-referential feeling. So that's all interior to the INTJ. That's all inside of them. On the outside, they have this logical thing, and they also have extroverted sensing, which is inferior. Inferior meaning like it's one of the last functions that they barely use. And so, especially when they're younger, they, and I mean under the age of 25 or something, or under the age of 20, the INTJ is not really going to be using their extroverted sensing that much because it's in that it's in that inferior spot. And extroverted sensing is all about perceiving the exterior world in a way that is physical. So that means anything aesthetic, anything kinesthetic. So that's sort of extroverted sensing and just seeing things the way that they are. It's a perceiving function. So it's not something where you're making decisions. You're just simply observing the world as it is. So it's an observing function, a perceiving function, and it's more about simply observing things as they are. It doesn't always have to be kinesthetic or aesthetic, but that's also a part of extroverted sensing. And so they have a little bit of that, and they can sometimes lean on that. And so they are sort of observing things as they are, observing the world as it is, and they're also observing these objective facts and speaking in this objective way. And so putting all of this together, the INTJ comes across like this. They come across very logical, very objective, and sometimes even too blunt, too rude. That's kind of the stereotype, oftentimes because it's true. And they're coming across this way, but then on the inside, They're not that way, okay? They're not that way at all. They have introverted intuition, they have introverted feeling, they have no idea what's going on, okay? They're not that way. Um, and so there can be a disconnect for people because when you first meet an INTJ, they seem very logical and very logical. But then when you really get to know them, you see that, and they seem very cold, because they have extroverted thinking. They seem very logical, very cold, very fact-based. When you really get to know them, they are actually very subjective, very much, they come across almost like a feeler. And I think this is, of course, because it really takes a while to understand, and sometimes it can be confusing or even off-putting because when you think one person is one way and they're not that way, that's usually not something that anybody really likes to experience. And so for that reason, it can be a little bit off-putting when that happens. Like the INTJ comes across very logical and everything, and then you get to know them and they're not that logical. They're in a way they're not terribly logical. They are ultimately logical because they're going to make decisions with extroverted thinking, and they will value logic over their identity or subjective preferences and things like that. So ultimately they make logical decisions, but they have a lot of trouble because of that introverted feeling being in the third function and because of introverted intuition. So when you really get to know an INTJ, they're not as logical as they seem, although ultimately they do make logical decisions simply because of that extroverted thinking. But the INTJ can have a lot of frustration because they come across as very logical and cold, but inside they know that they're not, and so there's this huge disconnect. And so what does the INTJ usually wear? The INTJ usually wears a lot of black. And the reason for that is because black is practical. That's the extroverted thinking. And also because black is this kind of amorphous, mysterious thing. And I think the INTJ has this sense or this feeling, this idea that they really resonate with things that are unknown. Introverted intuition is very vague. And so that's their first function. So they really resonate with that. And they also resonate with, like the introverted feeling of being very subjective. And so pure black can really be something that really resonates with the INTJ. It's also very practical, minimal, and they really like that. They're not really big on the details, like they're not big on introverted sensing. The INTJ will often not really decorate their home that much, especially a younger INTJ. They're not going to have a lot of these like knickknacks and trinkets like an ISFJ or an ESFJ would have because of that introverted sensing. Like they just don't have that. They don't really have all of that kind of like wanting to have all of this detail, so I think the minimalism aspect of black also works really well because it's minimal. It's a really common color, so it's really practical. You can always usually get the same garment in pure black, and that can just be very nice. And then it also matches, they find probably that it matches how they come across because they come across very logical and very serious. Black can be seen as like very serious and very logical, so that kind of like works well, and they're not misconstrued. Like if an INTJ wears pink, it's just going to be confusing for people because you see someone wearing pink and then they're just really matter of fact and this and that. And I mean, for some reason that's just not the association we have in our culture, and maybe that should change. That's a whole other topic. But they really find that when they wear black they have good results, and it works. And also they identify with black because of their introverted functions, like I discussed. So they wear a lot of black. They just gravitate toward black, like they just can't help it. And even if they have a lot of other colors in their closet, because they're like, I can't keep wearing black, they always end up wearing black. How do I know this? I'm an INTJ, okay? So they always wear black. And I often will wear black, more than I even want. And so the other thing with INTJ, I would recommend now, oh wait, I forgot to say one more thing. So then they also will have some, they'll wear black, they'll wear a lot of black. They will wear a lot of, just pretty plain pieces. But they also, in general, will have something from their introverted feeling that they want to communicate. So they're going to have something that they um, that is unique to them. They're not going to simply wear black. They will always have something that's unique to them. For a woman, maybe it's like her jewelry will be unique to her. For a man, it may be something about his haircut or something about just his accessories or something, or even like his coat may be a certain way, maybe a certain style, something that just feels a little bit more like him or like her, something. And why is that? Because of introverted feeling, because they still want to communicate that sense of identity a little bit through their style. So they may have a distinct color palette to them. If they don't only wear pure black, they have a pretty minimal but distinct color palette. And they will pretty much stick to that. They really want to honor that introverted feeling, honor their sense of identity. They want to have a personal style. They want to have an aesthetic. And they often do. Like, they often will have that, whether they like it or not. They do have a certain style. Not that every INTJ looks the same, but they have a certain style. I mean, each INTJ will have their style, if that makes sense. And it usually is grounded in the color black. It's like black plus something unique, you see? Like black plus the introverted feeling identity type thing. And so my advice for the INTJ is, you often come across as being very matter of fact and logical, but on the inside, you know that you're not completely that way. And so there can be a disconnect when you're trying to connect with people. It can be even impractical to come across too matter of fact, too blunt, too logical, because it may just feel like a disconnect between you and the person you're trying to talk with, and you're trying to bridge that gap, but you can't quite do it. And the way that I would recommend bridging that gap is by incorporating more of those things that are associated with your personal identity, with your introverted feeling. So if you you know, like punk rock music or something, try to incorporate a little bit more of that into how you look. It may seem like it's self-indulgent to the INTJ, that feels self-indulgent, but it's actually very practical. And the reason why it's practical is that it's going to aid in your communication. And the way it's going to do that is that you're going to come across like the person you actually are. And that will make talking with you a lot easier, because people will have more of a sense of how you actually are. And so, because it's really difficult, when you come across in a certain way, when you come up, I mean, as an image consultant, it's not my job to tell people how to come across. It's just my job to explain to people how they can achieve the look that they want to achieve. And so, depending on your features, your coloration, etc., you're going to achieve each look very differently, and that's a field in and of itself. I mean, it's called image consulting, right? That's the whole field that I work in, right? How you're going to achieve, your image, your look, and everything like that. But it's a field in and of itself, so it's really a topic that is beyond just this video. But what you can start to think about is incorporating some more aspects of that unique identity that you have into your style. Don't just stop at black. Even if you have to like push yourself a little bit, again, it may seem self-indulgent, but it's really going to help. Actually, it's not just self-indulgent. It's going to help because people will start to see you for how you really are. And that is actually a very practical thing. And you're going to save everyone a lot of time. People are not going to be confused by you. If you communicate who you are effectively through your image, through your style, you're going to save everybody a lot of headache, because people will just kind of get who you are visually before they even really talk with you. And then that just helps everybody calibrate. That helps to take the edge off, like in terms of coming across the wrong way and confusing people. And so, as someone with extroverted thinking in your secondary function, you have a lot of trouble actually, in a way, with communicating a lot of things. You would think you wouldn't, but you do, because you will never really fully be able to communicate your introverted intuition, because your introverted intuition is stronger by definition than your extroverted thinking. So you'll always, in a way, struggle to fully communicate all of your ideas and everything. And as you get older, it will get easier because your function stack will become stronger. So when you're really young, it's going to be particularly difficult to communicate your ideas and these like amorphous, like just ideas that you have. And then as you get older, your extroverted thinking gets stronger and you're more able to communicate effectively. And then as you get older, your introverted feeling becomes stronger and your extroverted sensing becomes stronger. So you become a much more balanced person. Things are just going to get easier too in terms of communication. And also as you get older, you'll have more of a sense of aesthetics. You'll have more of a preference for aesthetics. And maybe you'll even decorate your home one day when you're like 50. Okay. Because finally you'll be that ISFP. You'll be that ISFP, that ESFP, because of you're going to grow into your inferior functions. And so, this is kind of a part of growing up as the INTJ, is getting involved with introverted feeling and extroverted sensing, expressing who you really are. That's a part of growing up as an INTJ. And growing into all of your, into, really who you are and all of the inferior functions and how they support you and things like that. So anyway, that's it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are an INTJ, let me know about your experience with style. I'd be very curious to know that. And in general, just if you're not an INTJ, let me know your MBTI type and your experience with style. Do you find that your introverted self, like the introverted functions, how you are on the inside matches how you are on the outside? And have you found ways to bridge that gap? Do you want to bridge that gap? Do you like that kind of like surprise factor that that's not how you actually are? Things like that, I'd be curious to know. Oh, if you're interested in booking an image consulting service with me, then I will leave a link down below to how you can do that. And I mostly focus on how each person can achieve an aesthetic look based on their features, their coloration, etc. And but you can take a look at the details of my services below. I'll leave a link below, and you can see if there's something there for you. So that is it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you next time. Okay, bye.